Hi girls, this PowerPoint is designed to help you review the key skills of identifying variables in psychological research. So we're going to start with a quick overview of what the two key variables are, then have some practice at identifying them in some examples. So make sure you have the accompanying worksheet and a pen ready, because as we go you'll be completing activities. So I'll tell you when to pause the PowerPoint so you have time to record your answers, and then you can just restart once you're done. Okay, so let's begin with some definitions. So a variable generally is any factor in an experiment that can be changed or varied. So in psychology, we've already looked at the two key variables that you need to be able to understand what they are and then identify them. So can you remember what those two are? So on your worksheet, you'll see that there's a space for you to fill in the name of the two variables. So off you go, spend a moment just filling those in. Okay, so you should have independent variable and dependent variable. Okay, so now let's have a look at definitions, so what each of them are. So the first one, so the independent variable, so what I want you to do first of all is I want you to jot down in the box that's provided what you can remember about what an independent variable is. So pause the PowerPoint and then just spend a moment filling in just what your idea is what an independent variable is. Okay, so here is the textbook definition. So an independent variable is the factor in an experiment that the researcher manipulates or changes in order to assess its effect on the participant's behavior or responses. So every experiment is going to have at least one independent variable. Some have more than that. And the way that I like to think of it is when you're trying to identify this variable, in your mind, pretend that there's two groups that are going to take part in your experiment. And then think about, well, what is one group going to be exposed to and the other one's not? So this factor is your independent variable. So often in an experiment, a researcher will actually change the amount of the independent variable. So for example, say you wanted to do a study where you wanted to investigate the effects of sleep deprivation. So something that I'm sure that we're all a little bit too familiar with. So what you would do in that experiment is you'd have different groups of participants and you'd change the amount of sleep that each group was getting. So that is the independent variable there. So you're actually going, one group may get 4 hours sleep, the next one may get 6 hours, and the next one get 8 hours. So the amount of sleep is the variable that you've manipulated. So what I want you to do now, again, pause the PowerPoint and add any extra notes that you'd like onto your worksheet in the space provided, just to highlight any of the things that you now understand for the independent variable. Okay, so next we're looking at the dependent variable. So quickly jot down in the space provided, what do you remember about the dependent variable? Again, after you're done that, just push start and then we'll go through what the definition is. Okay, so the dependent variable is the factor in an experiment that the researcher chooses to measure in order to assess the effects of the IV. So in other words, it's actually the data that you collect from your participants. So when you observe a change in your dependent variable, it's assumed that this has resulted from your independent variable. So oftentimes the dependent variable is displayed as the scores or the data that's actually collected in an experiment. So if there's a results section provided, you can often look at that, the table or the graph that's shown, and that often will show you what the researcher has actually measured in that experiment. So again, pause the PowerPoint and fill in any extra notes that you'd like on the sheet provided. Okay, so now let's have a go at actually identifying these variables in a few examples. As we've talked before, the application of skills is something that is very important in psychology, particularly when we get to year 12. It's one of the key factors that they will assess in the exam. So let's, now that we know the definitions, let's actually see if we can identify them in some examples. Okay, so make sure that you've got your worksheet ready so you can fill them in as we go. So example 1, so you're running an experiment this time to work out whether eating a low-fat diet will improve physical health. So first of all, to determine the independent variable, think about what factor the researcher is going to change or manipulate in this experiment. So what thing will one group be exposed to and another one not? Okay, and that will be your independent variable. Next, have a think about for your dependent variable, what is the researcher actually going to measure? So what data or what results are they going to collect from their participants after they have manipulated that independent variable? Okay, so take a moment to record your answers on the sheet, and then we'll go through the solutions. Okay, so independent variable is eating a low-fat diet. So like we said before, if you had two groups in your study, one group would have a low-fat diet, the other group would just have a normal diet. Okay, so after we've manipulated that, what are we actually going to measure? What participant behaviors are we interested in? And in this case, it's the improvement in the physical health. Now, how you measure that would be the next step, which we'll look at when we get to operationalizing variables. But at this stage, just that general statement of physical health is enough. Okay, example 2. So this time, students who exercise once a day will have improved quality of sleep. Okay, so again, think about what factor the researcher will manipulate for the independent variable, and then what they will measure for the dependent variable. Okay, pause the PowerPoint while you record your responses. Okay, so what do we have? Independent variable, exercising once a day. So the example has actually told you that that's how much one group is going to exercise, and you can assume that there'd be a control group that would have no exercise, so we could compare against them. And then what are we going to measure? So what participant behaviors are we interested in? This time it's the improved quality of sleep from our participants. Okay, let's do the last one. So thinking positively when goal shooting improves accuracy in a match. So what will be manipulated or changed, and then what participant behaviors or experiences will be recorded. Again, pause the PowerPoint, record your answers, and then click Start to see the results. So independent variable is thinking positively. Dependent variable would be the accuracy of the goal shooting. So that's the behavior they're actually going to record. Okay, your worksheet now has 3 extra examples for you to work on. So what I'd like you to do is pause the PowerPoint and spend a few minutes working your way through those independently. Once you're done, you'll see that there's 3 remaining slides on this PowerPoint that go through the solutions. So just click Start and then work your way through those as you're done. And then that is our review of independent and dependent variables for today. So the next PowerPoint will cover research hypotheses. So once you're done this one, feel free to get that, print off that worksheet, and we can work through that.